It was a sunny afternoon when my stepbrother, Josh, arrived at our house. He had come to stay with us for 30 days, and at first, I thought it was nothing out of the ordinary. Josh was 2 years older than me, tall, with a confident air that made him stand out. We weren't very close growing up because we lived in different cities after our parents married, but now, here he was, moving into the room next to mine for a whole month. I had always kept my life to myself. I wasn't the kind of person who shared every little thing with others. I preferred to stay quiet, handle my own business, and live life the way I felt most comfortable. By the time I was 24, I knew myself very well. I knew my likes, my dislikes, my fears, and the habits that had become part of my everyday life. Back in high school, like most teenagers, I went through a lot of curiosity. I wondered about the feelings that came with having romantic connections. There was a time when I experimented with small crushes and the excitement of having someone to talk to after class or during free periods. It was a phase, a part of growing up that felt normal. But everything changed when I went to an all-girls boarding school. In boarding school, life was different. There were no boys around. At first, I thought it would be boring and lonely, but I soon discovered that not having boys around changed a lot of things. Without the distractions of teenage crushes and relationships, I had time to focus on other things and meet friends who would influence me in unexpected ways. One of the things I discovered was a different kind of pleasure. Some of my friends introduced me to something new. They were open about their experiences and shared how certain toys brought them comfort and relaxation. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. I was nervous and unsure, but curiosity got the better of me. I decided to try one for myself, just to see what the fuss was about. The first time I used it, I wasn't sure what to expect. I hesitated, but as soon as I let go of my fears and allowed myself to experience it, I was blown away. It felt incredibly good, better than I ever thought it could. It wasn't just good, it was amazing. I felt calm, happy, and free in a way that I had never felt before. From that moment on, I knew that I had discovered something that gave me all the satisfaction I needed. I never felt the need to look for anyone or anything else. I didn't want to get into complicated relationships. I didn't have time for drama or heartbreak. I was okay with being on my own, learning to rely on myself for happiness. It became my little secret, my personal comfort, and I liked it that way. It didn't bother me that some people would judge me for it. I had my reasons, and for me, this was enough. So, I kept it private. It was my choice, my habit, and I controlled it completely. I knew what worked for me, and I was at peace with it. That was all that mattered. After school, I chose to keep to myself. I wasn't the kind of person who liked being in groups or constantly hanging out with people. I preferred the quiet, the calm, and having time alone to think and do things at my own pace. Romantic relationships just didn't appeal to me. I had watched my friends go through all the drama, crushes, heartbreaks, arguments, and tears, and I knew I wanted none of that in my life. I found that being by myself brought me peace, and I was okay with that. I was perfectly happy with the life I had built for myself. I had my own little routines, reading in the evenings, listening to music, or just relaxing in my room with my thoughts. My life felt complete in its simplicity, and I didn't feel the need to add anything else. There was something comforting about not having to explain myself or answer to anyone about the choices I made. My world was small, but it was enough for me. I had a personal secret, something I knew would raise eyebrows if anyone ever found out. It wasn't something I shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. It was mine, and I protected it like a treasure. I knew that if the wrong people found out, they would judge me, gossip about me, or make me feel ashamed, even though I had no reason to. So I kept my secret to myself, safely tucked away in the corners of my mind. No one needed to know about it. It felt good to live without anyone prying into my business. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone, and that gave me a kind of freedom that many people didn't have. I didn't care if other people didn't understand or approved of my way of life. My choices were mine alone, and that was enough for me. I was content with my own company, and I learned that being independent could feel just as good, if not better, than chasing after complicated relationships. For years, I stayed this way. Life moved on, and I continued to guard my little secret while also enjoying the simple joys of everyday living. It was a quiet, safe, and simple life, and I was happy. Josh's presence in the house was a bit unsettling at first. He was charming and had this way of talking that made everyone laugh. My mother adored him, and even though we weren't blood related, she treated him like her own son. I tried to stay out of his way, though. I wasn't used to having a guy around, and I valued my privacy more than anything. A few days into his stay, I began to notice certain things about Josh. It started small, almost unnoticeable at first. The way he would glance at me from across the room when he thought I wasn't paying attention. There was something in his gaze that made me uneasy, something that felt far from innocent. It wasn't the kind of look a brother gives his sister. At first, I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that I was just overthinking things, that maybe I was imagining it because I was still getting used to having him around. But as the days went on, I couldn't shake the feeling. It became clear to me that it wasn't my imagination at all. Josh would find ways to stay near me, ways that felt more intentional than coincidental. He would sit close to me on the couch during family movie nights, close enough that I could feel his presence, his warmth. I tried to ignore it, hoping it was just his natural way of being sociable, but deep down, I felt uncomfortable. It got worse when I was in the kitchen. There were times when I would be busy preparing food, and he would suddenly appear, standing just a little too close behind me or brushing against me while reaching for something. I could feel my heart racing each time it happened, and I found myself tensing up without even realizing it. I couldn't understand why he would do that. Was it an accident? Or was it something else? I wanted to believe the best in people, but the way he lingered around me made my gut twist. One evening, after I closed my door to have some time to myself, I thought I was safe. I thought that by shutting the door, I could gather my thoughts and calm myself. But when I glanced through the small gap in the door, I could see him standing outside, as if waiting. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't knocking or calling out, but he was just standing there waiting. My hands shook as I closed the door tighter, wondering what he was doing and why he seemed to be always near me. I tried to convince myself that there was no real reason to feel this way. Maybe he was just adjusting to living with us, and maybe his behavior was just a part of his personality. But the unease wouldn't go away. Every little action, every small movement felt calculated, like he was testing boundaries, and it made me nervous. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something wasn't right, and I had to figure out what it meant. The more I thought about it, the harder it became to shake the discomfort. It was as if his presence had become a constant reminder of something I couldn't put into words. I couldn't trust my own feelings anymore. Was I just being paranoid? Or was there really something off about the way he looked at me and stayed so close? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for certain: I needed to be careful. One evening, my parents went out to a dinner party, leaving just Josh and me alone in the house. I didn't like being alone with him. It made me feel uneasy, and I couldn't shake the strange tension that seemed to linger whenever he was nearby. So, I stayed in my room, hoping to avoid any interaction with him. I knew that if I could just stay in my own space, I would feel safer. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to clear my mind. The quiet of the house felt strange without my parents around, and I could hear little creaks and groans of the old wooden floors as the house settled. My thoughts drifted, and I found myself unable to shake the worry that came from being alone with him. I closed my eyes, willing my anxiety to fade, but the more I tried, the more unsettled I felt. I knew what always helped calm me down, though. I couldn't resist reaching for my favorite toy. It was something I had kept to myself for years, my little secret, my comfort during the times when I felt anxious, lonely, or just needed a moment to escape from the stress of the world. It was always there for me when I needed it, a small but reliable way to relax. In a moment of quiet desperation, I decided to reach for it. It felt comforting in my hands, familiar and soothing. My mind started to drift as I allowed myself to sink into that moment of peace, focusing on the sensation and pushing away my worries. It was my escape, my safe space, a way to shut out all the tension and confusion. I knew it wasn't something I talked about with anyone, but in this moment, I didn't care. I needed it to calm the storm of thoughts swirling in my head, to give me some relief from the stress of being alone in the house with Josh so close by. But as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. The thought lingered at the back of my mind, making me pause for just a second. I couldn't tell if it was just my anxiety or if something was really there. I froze, my heart pounding harder, unsure if I had heard a sound or if I was letting my nerves get the best of me. I tried to focus again, but the unease wouldn't leave me. Something felt off, something just beyond my understanding. I was in the middle of enjoying myself, completely lost in my own thoughts and the comforting sensation when, out of nowhere, the door suddenly swung open. My whole body froze as if time had stopped. I felt a wave of panic rush over me, my stomach sinking like I'd just seen a ghost. Standing there in the doorway was Josh, his eyes wide with surprise and something else, something I couldn't put my finger on. "I knocked," he said, his voice low and steady, carrying a sharp edge that made my heart pound even harder. "You didn't answer." Before I could think, I pulled the blanket over myself, trying desperately to cover up, my hands shaking as I tried to make myself invisible. My face felt hot, my cheeks burning with a mix of anger, fear, and pure humiliation. I could feel the panic rising in my chest as I shouted, "Get out!" My voice came out in a mix of anger and trembling fear, and I couldn't stop the way it wavered. But he didn't leave. No, he didn't move an inch. Instead, he leaned casually against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his chest as a smirk began to form on his lips. That smirk sent chills down my spine, and I could feel every nerve in my body go on high alert. I could see it in his expression, he was amused, and he knew exactly how uncomfortable I felt. It was like he had been planning this moment all along. "I didn't know you were into that," he said smoothly, his voice carrying just enough weight to make my face flush even harder. His words felt like sharp daggers, cutting through my shame and my fear all at once. "Josh, leave," I repeated louder this time, my voice shaking with fury and panic. My hands gripped the blanket tighter, as if it could protect me from the way his presence made me feel so exposed, so vulnerable. My body trembled under the weight of the moment, and I felt trapped, unable to breathe, unable to think. But he didn't listen to me. No, he stepped closer this time, ignoring every word I said as if they were nothing more than a passing breeze. My heart pounded harder as he moved toward me, his voice smooth and calm as he said, "You don't have to hide from me. We're adults, you know. I can help you if you want." His voice had a certain edge to it, a mix of confidence and something darker that I couldn't identify. I could feel the walls of my room closing in, and the air felt colder somehow. His words felt like poison, like they carried a weight I couldn't escape. My hands clenched into fists under the blanket as my body shook, and all I could think was, why is he doing this to me? What does he want? My mind was a whirlwind of fear, shame, and confusion, and I couldn't stop the overwhelming emotions that threatened to consume me. He chuckled softly but finally turned and walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I sat there, shaking, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The next few days were tense. I avoided Josh as much as possible, but he didn't make it easy. He started teasing me, dropping suggestive comments whenever we were alone. It was as if he enjoyed seeing me squirm. I hated it, but at the same time, a part of me felt a strange thrill. I tried to push those thoughts away, telling myself it was wrong. One evening, as the golden glow of the setting sun filled my room with soft light, I felt an odd excitement bubbling inside me. I was sitting on my bed, staring at the way the sunlight danced across the wooden floor when a thought crossed my mind. What if I left the door open tonight? I looked at the door for a moment, uncertain. But then, I remembered how much I wanted to experience him and keep my toy. My heart raced at the idea, but I couldn't stop myself. So, slowly, I pushed the door open just a crack, letting the faint breeze from the hallway drift into my room. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden outside. I took a deep breath and told myself it would be fine. I wanted this, to feel close to him, to know what it was like again. My hands trembled as I waited, but my curiosity and boldness kept pulling me forward. The minutes seemed to crawl as I listened to the quiet sounds of the house, the distant sound of the birds chirping or the rustling of leaves. Then, I heard footsteps. My heart leapt, and I knew this was my moment. I closed my eyes, took another breath, and waited. Before I knew it, he appeared, his voice soft and low, like the wind brushing through trees. He came into the room, the sound of his steps gentle against the creaky wooden floor. I could feel his presence so close that it sent a shiver down my spine. My cheeks grew warm, but I didn't pull away. I let myself be drawn into it, allowing the connection to build and wrap itself around me like a comforting blanket. I could feel his touch, his warmth, and it was everything I hoped for. I allowed myself to lose all my fears and doubts as the moment carried us further and deeper into this private space. It felt successful, like tasting a sweet treat you've wanted for so long. My heart felt at ease, and the experience was both new and familiar, like the first time you try something magical and realize you can't stop thinking about it afterward. I knew this wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about trust and desire, the pull of connection, and a feeling I didn't want to end. I could still feel him near me, his presence solid and warm. For a moment, everything felt right.